I sensed that this Christmas dinner would turn out to be a catastrophe the instant I stepped inside. It wasn't as if I was unaware of what awaited me. It's always the same story. However, this year, I was resolved to maintain my composure, regardless of everything else. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Maya, the youngest of 4 children. Yet, being the youngest has never been perceived as something sweet or endearing in my family. If anything, it has consistently been the reason they look down on me. I've grown accustomed to it by now. At 28, to them, I'm still the little one. I lack a husband or children like my older siblings, but I have achieved success in other areas. I possess a career I take pride in, a small yet devoted circle of friends, and a sense of independence they fail to comprehend. For them, it's always revolved around marriage and children. Nothing else holds value. Christmas dinner has always been significant for our family. It's among the rare occasions each year when we all convene at my parents' home, a grand, old Victorian residence that has been in the family for generations. It's a house that appears perfect for family photos, yet is a nightmare to maintain. I have always disliked that place. It's cold and unwelcoming, much like my parents, but it's tradition, so every year, I attend. Even though I would prefer to be anywhere else, I go, because, well, family. I arrived just after everyone else. My eldest brother, Chris, was already there with his wife and 3 children, loudly preparing the table, as if they owned the place. Then there was Amy, my sister, with her husband and their baby, always flawless, always immaculate, always flaunting their perfect life. My parents were in the kitchen, hustling about, acting as if they had everything under control while somehow making everyone feel like they were still children. As usual, I quietly slipped in, hoping to evade the inevitable drama. When my mom spotted me, her face brightened with that phony smile she always wore, the kind that made me feel unwelcome, as if I was merely tolerated for the sake of the holiday. Maya, sweetheart, she said, embracing me in a hug that felt more obligatory than genuine. I'm so glad you could join us. Please, take a seat. I hardly had time to reply before my dad called from the other room. His voice booming with that authority, he used to remind everyone he was still the head of the household. Dinner's almost ready, Chris. Amy, please get the kids settled. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. I wanted to speak up, but it was Christmas, and I didn't want to stir up trouble just yet. That's when my mom, in her subtle way of making everything feel like a lesson, spoke again. Maya, why don't you sit at the kids' table? We've got a special spot for you there. With the cousins. I froze. I couldn't believe it. My mom, with her sweet, syrupy tone, had just invited me to sit at the kids' table, the one they set up every year with a mismatched collection of chairs, paper plates, and half-hearted decorations. I glanced into the dining room. The adults' table was elegantly arranged, with fine china, glasses of wine, and candles that lent the whole setting an elegant, grown-up atmosphere. At the head of the table sat my dad, looking as smug as ever, surrounded by my married siblings. There was no space for me. Oh. I looked back at my mom, struggling to suppress the anger, bubbling within me. I could feel the familiar sting, the one I always experienced, when they attempted to remind me that I wasn't good enough. In their eyes, it wasn't the first time they'd made me feel insignificant, but this was different. This was not just a casual remark, or a sidelong glance. This was intentional. They were aware of their actions. I forced a smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. Sure. Thanks, I replied, attempting to keep my voice steady. She smiled as well, but there was something in her expression, something that indicated she didn't genuinely care about my feelings. This was all about maintaining appearances, ensuring everything was perfect. I doubt she even realized how much it hurt to be dismissed like that. Without uttering another word, I walked over to the kids' table, my stomach twisting with each step. It wasn't as if I expected anything better, but for a brief moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd treat me like an adult. I sat down on the little plastic chair, surrounded by toddlers who were more focused on their mashed potatoes than the awkward silence that hung in the air. My cousins were in their own little world, ignoring me entirely. I gazed at the plates before me, sloppy, unappetizing. It was as if they hadn't even attempted to make it look appealing. I could have sworn I saw one of the toddlers, drop a piece of broccoli under the table, and I felt like screaming. That was when it dawned on me. This wasn't merely about the table. This wasn't about tradition or holiday spirit. This was about them viewing me as inferior. They weren't even trying to conceal it anymore. And at that moment, something within me snapped. I quietly stood up, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I didn't need to say a word. I didn't need to shout or create a scene. I simply grabbed my coat, threw it over my shoulder, and walked directly to the door. As I opened it, my mom's voice called out, almost too late. "Maya, where are you going?" she asked, her voice now tinged with confusion and a hint of irritation. I didn't look back. "I'm leaving," I stated, my voice icy. "Enjoy your dinner." The door slammed behind me. The cold air hit me like a wave. But I didn't care. My car was parked just down the street, and I was out of there. The sound of my parents' frantic calls fading into the distance. I drove for hours, aimlessly, until I finally ended up at a quiet diner, sitting alone in a booth. I ordered something warm, my hands still trembling from the adrenaline. I couldn't recall the last time I'd felt such a mix of rage and relief all at once. That was when my phone began to buzz incessantly. Messages, missed calls, the usual. I glanced at the screen. It was my family, Chris, Amy, even my dad, all calling and texting. But the one that caught my attention was from my mom. "Where are you? We need to talk. This isn't a joke, Maya." I felt a smirk tug at my lips, the kind that had been building all evening. I wasn't going to answer. Not yet. The ball was in my court now, and they had no idea what was coming. I set my phone down and sipped my coffee, watching the steam rise into the air. What would I do next? That was the question. And trust me, they wouldn't appreciate the answer. I lingered in that diner for what felt like an eternity, my phone buzzing every few minutes. The messages became increasingly desperate, each one trying to pull me back into their little game. Chris was the first to send me a message. "Maya, this is ridiculous. Where are you?" It was followed by another from Amy. "Mom is freaking out. We just want you back." Then my dad chimed in. "Come on. Don't act like a child. Get back here." I didn't reply. I didn't owe them an explanation. They had made their choice when they treated me like a second-class citizen at their precious dinner. All I had wanted was to be regarded as an adult. But instead, they had decided I was still the baby, who needed to be tucked away with the toddlers. After about an hour, I finally picked up my phone to check the messages again. The tension was thickening, as if they were beginning to realize I wasn't just going to acquiesce. Then, my mom's text appeared, and it made my stomach churn. "Maya, I don't understand why you're doing this. Your siblings are worried, and this is ruining Christmas. Don't make this about you. You're being selfish." I stared at the message for a moment, feeling a surge of anger rise again. Selfish? They were the ones being selfish. The entire evening had been focused on their image, their expectations. I had been nothing but a piece in their little puzzle of perfection. But to her, I was the problem. Typical. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this point. Instead, I simply hit the block button on her number. She wasn't going to manipulate me into feeling guilty. Not this time. I took a deep breath, trying to ground myself. This wasn't just a reaction. I had a plan. I had been wronged by each of them. And tonight, I was going to ensure they understood just how much they had messed up. Later that evening, after I had finished my meal, and the adrenaline had subsided a bit, I decided it was time. I opened the family group chat, where they typically vented about everything and anything. There were already a dozen messages concerning me. "This is absurd. She's acting like a child. What's the big deal? We didn't mean it that way. I think she's just overreacting." I scrolled through them, my fingers itching. I knew I could just ignore it, but that would have been the easy way out. I needed them to feel it. I needed them to comprehend that their treatment of me had repercussions. I began typing, slowly at first, but then my words gained momentum. It wasn't merely about tonight. It was about everything they had done to me over the years. "You guys don't get it, do you? You really don't. This isn't just about a seat at the table. It's about how you've treated me my entire life. Like I'm not good enough. Like I'm invisible unless you need something from me. I'm the only one who doesn't receive praise. For following the same path you all did. Get married, have kids, play the game. But I've built my own life. And I'm doing just fine. So maybe it's time you all recognize that. I hesitated before hitting send, allowing the weight of my words to sink in. For the first time in forever, I felt like I had control over the situation. I wasn't begging for their approval anymore. I wasn't going to be their little project. I pressed send. It didn't take long for the messages to flood in. My phone pinged repeatedly, each message more frantic than the last. The first one was from my dad. Maya, this is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. Get over yourself. Amy quickly followed. You can't just leave like that, and not expect everyone to be upset. What did you think was going to happen? Chris added. We didn't do anything wrong. Maya, you need to calm down and return, before we're all ruined by your tantrum. Each message struck harder than the last. They still didn't comprehend. They were still attempting to place the blame on me, still making it my fault that they treated me like garbage. I didn't respond. Instead, I did something I had been contemplating for quite some time. I opened the Photos app on my phone and began scrolling. There it was. An old family picture, taken years ago, right before everything started to unravel. A perfect Christmas photo, with everyone smiling and happy, everyone except me. I was there, of course, forced into the picture like an afterthought. But I knew the truth behind those smiles. I knew what had been said, what had been implied, all those years. I took that photo and, without hesitation, posted it in the family group chat. But this time, I added a caption. Here's to the perfect family, always ensuring the youngest one knows their place. Then, I powered down my phone. I let the silence envelop me, feeling as if I was finally liberated from their chains. I didn't know what would happen next, but I didn't care. They had pushed me too far, and now, I was finished. I didn't check my phone for hours. It felt almost surreal, sitting there without the constant buzzing and pinging of their desperate texts. The silence was oddly soothing, and I felt a sense of tranquility that I hadn't experienced in years. For once, I wasn't the one trying to appease them. I stayed up late, just reflecting. I knew what they would be saying behind my back, even though they didn't have the courage to confront me directly. My siblings, especially Chris, probably thought I was overreacting, believing I was just being the family drama queen again. But I wasn't. I was finished playing the role they had scripted for me. And if they couldn't grasp that, well, I'd let them face the consequences. Eventually, I plugged my phone in to charge, and, with a sigh, checked it again. The notifications were as relentless as I had anticipated. Dozens of missed calls, texts that ranged from angry to apologetic, but all coated in an underlying frustration. I scrolled through them, reading their words with a sense of grim satisfaction. They were unraveling, and I wasn't going to make it easy for them to piece everything back together. My mom's text was the longest. I don't know what's gotten into you, Maya. You're acting like this is about us when it's really about you. You can't just run away from your family like this. You're tearing us apart. Please come back. Christmas is ruined without you. This isn't who you are. There it was. The guilt trip. The attempt to twist the situation so that I was the villain. They always did this, making me feel like I was the one creating trouble for wanting to be treated like an adult. Then, my dad's message. This is childish. We need to discuss this when you've calmed down. And of course, Chris, if you think walking out of dinner was going to make a statement, you're mistaken. You're making it worse. You owe us an apology. An apology? For what? For standing up for myself for once? For demanding to be recognized as an equal in a family that only valued me when it suited them? No. I wasn't apologizing for anything. But then, there was Amy's message. It was different from the others. It wasn't angry or demanding. It was almost pleading. Maya, I know you're upset, and I understand why. But this isn't the way to mend things. You're my sister, and I love you, but you're pushing everyone away. Please, just come home. We can discuss this. It's Christmas. For God's sake. I stared at her words for a while. I had always been close to Amy. She was the one who used to defend me when the others would gang up on me as a child. But now, I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. Not after everything she had allowed to happen. Everything she had silently supported when she knew it was wrong. I took a deep breath, my thumb hovering over the screen. I wanted to respond. I wanted to explain to her that I wasn't being a diva, or causing drama, that I was standing up for myself, that I was tired of being treated like the perpetual child in the family. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I typed a brief reply. I'll think about it. I sent it and set my phone down, feeling a pang of guilt. But I shook it off. I knew I couldn't return to that table, not without a significant change in how they perceived me. And I wasn't about to let them sweep this under the rug as if it were nothing. The next morning, I woke up to even more messages. Some were from family friends, inquiring about my whereabouts. They were genuinely concerned. But I didn't feel like explaining myself to anyone who wasn't part of the problem. And then, of course, there was a barrage of calls from my mom. But one message stood out. It was from Amy again. Maya, I've been talking to Chris and Mom. They're really upset. And honestly, so am I. We're a family. You can't just isolate yourself from us like this. If you don't come home soon, it's going to get worse. Please don't make this more complicated than it has to be. More pressure, more manipulation, and still no understanding of what I was experiencing. They weren't hearing me. They weren't listening. I knew what they were doing. What they always did. They were attempting to guilt me into returning, trying to make me feel like the one causing all the issues, when in reality, it was their refusal to see me as anything more than the youngest child that had been the problem all along. I picked up my phone, opened the group chat, and stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I contemplated what to say. I wanted to make my stand, to make them understand precisely why. I was done with their treatment of me. But the truth was, I wasn't sure I was ready to go back yet. Not until I was confident they had changed. Until I was certain they saw me for who I truly was. Then, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was from my dad. Maya, we need to talk. You can't just keep running away. You're going to regret this. It struck me like a ton of bricks. The same words. The same manipulative guilt trip. I could feel the tension mounting, as if the walls were closing in around me. But I didn't respond. Not yet. The day dragged on. And with each hour, I felt the pressure of their texts, their calls, their attempts to draw me back into their orbit. But no matter how many times my phone chimed, I maintained my distance. I had made my choice. And I wasn't about to let them bully me back into the role they had cast me in. As evening approached, I found myself sitting alone, gazing at the empty chair across from me, where I would have been seated if I had returned. A part of me, an old part, wanted to give in, to go back and make amends. It was Christmas, after all, a time for family, for togetherness. But I couldn't shake the feeling that if I returned now, it would be akin to admitting I wasn't worth fighting for, that all those years of being sidelined were perfectly acceptable, that they were right, and I was merely being dramatic. I thought about the photo I'd shared in the group chat, the one where I was forced into a smile, shoved to the side like I was an afterthought. That picture had conveyed everything I needed to express. I wasn't just upset about tonight. I was upset about every year they had treated me like this. Every birthday, every holiday, every family gathering, where I was relegated to the background, never given a voice. They assumed I would simply roll over and accept it, like I always had. But not this time. And then the phone rang again. This time, it was my mom. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the decline button, but something within me urged me to answer. Perhaps I was finally ready to hear what she had to say. Or maybe I was simply curious how far they would go to make me feel guilty. I took a deep breath and pressed the green button. Maya. My mom's voice came through, sounding tired, exasperated. We need to talk. This has gone on long enough. I remained silent, allowing her words to linger in the air. She waited for me to respond, but I didn't say anything. Look, she continued. We're family. You're complicating this more than it needs to be. I don't know what's gotten into you, but you're pushing everyone away. Your dad is upset. Chris is upset. Amy's. She paused, clearly attempting to gather her thoughts. I'm upset, Maya. I almost laughed. They were upset? After everything they had put me through, they had the audacity to say that? I could feel the old anger bubbling up, but I swallowed it down, not wanting to reveal how much she still affected me. I'm not pushing anyone away, Mom, I said, my voice calm but resolute. I'm just not playing your game anymore. I'm not going to sit at the kids' table, be treated like I'm invisible, and pretend everything's fine. She fell silent for a moment. I could almost hear her processing my words, trying to figure out how to steer the conversation back into a guilt trip. You can't just leave us hanging like this. Your dad's trying to make Christmas special. The whole family is here. It's not just about you. Maya, she finally said, her voice almost pleading. You're breaking the family apart. You know, I've spent my entire life trying to make everything work, trying to fit into the mold you all created for me. But no one ever truly saw me, did they? I shot back. You didn't want me as an adult. You wanted me to stay the little kid forever. And tonight was the final straw. She was quiet again, and I could tell it was hitting her. For the first time, she was actually hearing what I was saying. It wasn't merely about the seat at the dinner table. It was about how I'd been treated my entire life. I'm sorry, Maya, she finally said, but her voice was soft, uncertain. I didn't know you felt that way. Yeah, well, it took me a long time to realize it, too, I replied, my voice softening just a bit. But I'm done pretending. There was a long pause, and I could feel the tension in the air, even over the phone. For the first time in forever, I felt like I was finally being heard, like I had control over the situation, and it felt good. It felt empowering. Finally, she sighed. I get it. I really do. But I'm still your mother, and I just want us to be a family again. I let her words hang in the air for a moment. There was a time when I would have rushed back to them, desperate to make everything right. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had learned the hard way that they would never change, unless I forced them to see me as an equal. I'll think about it, I said, reiterating my earlier response. But this time it was different. It wasn't about me caving in. It was about taking my time. It was about them realizing that I wasn't just some afterthought, that I wasn't going to allow them to pull me back into their toxic cycle without change. All right, my mom said softly. I hope you'll come back soon. I just want you to be happy. I hung up the phone and leaned back, breathing deeply. It wasn't over. It wasn't a neat, clean resolution. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had taken control of the situation. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. And maybe, just maybe, they would finally see me for who I truly was. I placed my phone down and stared out the window, watching the snow fall gently into the darkness. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally free. And as for Christmas, it wasn't ruined, because for the first time in my life, I was going to take care of me. The rest could wait. As I sat there, allowing the snow to fall softly outside, I couldn't help but wonder, did I do the right thing? Or did I just walk away from something that could have been fixed? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.